Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is your host, Sean Neff, with another episode of Unsung Heroes. Today we have Dehran Swart, and he's going to tell us about his role in, or part of the struggle for our liberation, and what his role was therein. Good afternoon, Dehran. Welcome to our show, and it's fantastic having you here.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks
okay.
for the invitation and thanks for the opportunity to share my story. It's quite difficult to know where to start. There's just such a lot to talk about when one thinks back on just life growing up. And it's been almost 58 years of reflection that I have to think about. So maybe I should start off where I'm from, where I was born. Born in 1962 in Wynberg, Victory Street in Wynberg, just off Park Road. And I was born actually at home in a house owned by my uncle, Dr. Grimwood, as well as his wife, my aunt, my mother's sister, Abdia Grimwood. It was quite fortunate for me to be born in such a household with Dr. Grimwood being at the local GP around the corner, and my aunt being a midwife. So I was born in Wynberg, and funnily enough, I'm still staying in Wynberg, having moved out of Wynberg, stayed in another country, but back to the area. So yeah, I grew up in Wynberg. I went to school in Steenberg because the Grimwood family moved to Steenberg. Then we spent about 5 years in Zambia. My father was a teacher, the first graduate in his family, and he must have graduated at UCT in this 59, 60. So we spent quite a number of years in Zambia, which was quite interesting. I went to school there, preschool I suppose, sub A, standard 1, and I have fond memories of growing up there, late 60s, early 70s, and it was quite strange coming back to South Africa because I had a totally kind of a normal sort of schooling there with everybody, every shade of color that you could get was in my class. They were my friends. And coming back to South Africa, that's one of the first things, besides not being able to speak Afrikaans, but just to adapt to a school where there was only a certain shade of person in your class.
If I may just interrupt you, Ron, the time that you spent in Zambia, was it self exile? Was was your dad maybe hunted by the security forces?
Not at that time.
Okay.
That was after independence in Zambia, and they were looking at bolstering their teaching profession. And quite a number of South Africans actually went over after independence in Zambia to teach. So we traveled quite a bit around different areas, Lusaka, Kitwe, Luwansha, Chingola, lots of Mumbwa, sometimes in villages,
Wow.
So it's quite interesting times.
Wow.
And I have fond memories of those years. But yeah, so coming back to Douglas Road Primary School in Standard 2, it was quite a strange phenomenon to be in a so-called colored classroom, and it took time for me to adapt. So I think from an early age, it really hit me. I must have been about 7, 8, 9 years old at that stage, coming back to South Africa. And of course that's when you start talking about life, and luckily I have parents who are very politically aware about injustices. Our house was always filled with a range of literature from all sorts of angles, let us say, political persuasions, from the New Unity movement to TLSA to Black consciousness to the Congress movement and the PAC. So there's always a range of political literature in our house. So that also, I think I was blessed in that way, that my parents had that open sort of attitude and welcomed different political thought and persuasions and discussions in the household.
Just to intervene, it was also quite progressive at the time, because the guys were not there yet, and I think your dad was a step ahead of the rest, really.
Yes. I must say that being at school and being at within our family, it actually did make us more progressive than others. And when you at high school and you're raising certain issues, and some people think about, what are you talking about? And yeah, so there was a lot of apathy amongst communities, but there was this core group of mainly teachers that I was exposed to at high school, and of course my father was part of the progressive movement in schools. He taught for many years at Alexander Sinton and retired as the deputy principal there. So it was fortunate that I grew up in a family like that, who could actually guide and conscientize me about what is right, what is wrong, what are all the injustices that are happening. What about the migrants' labor system, segregation, separate development, separate schooling, Group Areas Act? All those were topical discussions in our home. So yes, so from an early age, I was exposed to the horrors of apartheid, and always had this yearning to do something about it. I could not know about it and just sit back and not do something about it. So if I think back now to maybe grade 8, standard 6, we had some of our family members coming over, and you go out and explore Cape Town. They're coming from overseas and coming back home, and you try to get onto a lovely beach like Muizenberg, Sunrise Circle, and get chased away. So I have memories of that. I have memories of being at school. That was 76 actually. I was in standard 7, grade 9, and coming home and finding out, well, your father, there's something that happened in town today, and your father was arrested. So at an early age, the trauma that many people have actually experienced, I had experienced when there were demonstrations in Cape Town, and Alexander Sinton High School was one of the the sites where lots of struggles happened. So in 76, what had happened is that they had surrounded the school. The police had surrounded the school. Students had been demonstrating, having placard demonstrations. The police surrounded the school and chased the students, jumped over the fences, chased the students. Many of the students, ran upstairs, ran up, into the roof, and to get away from being beaten up. And many of them actually were overcome by the tear gas up in the ceiling, up in the roof, and many of them jumped off from the first story and injured themselves. So this was the brutality that many people forget and don't realize how brutal the apartheid system was. And during that time, my father was assisting the injured students and protecting them, and of course the police didn't like that. He was arrested. He was beaten up. He was pushed into the van alongside another teacher, Mr. Evans. Um, and their glasses were broken. They were badly beaten. I think they were kept in Athlone Police Station at that time. So that was the kind of the first direct experience of the brutality in '76. And of course, I mean, I was only in standard 7, and the first thing I did was run across the road to my teacher. My Latin teacher was Mrs. Wessels, and she was also an activist, someone who had gone through the horrors of apartheid. I think she was married to Victor Wessels, who was also imprisoned and tortured and a political prisoner. And I went to them and said, Ms. Wessels, this is happening, what should I do? And he said, look, what had happened in the past few days? Does your dad have any literature lying around? You have to get rid of all of that. And I'm a young teenager, and you have to take this responsibility. I'm the eldest child, and I said, well, he was on the parade the other day, and he brought a lot of tear gas canisters home that were fired. So he said, okay, let's get that, and let's, So I had to go home and clear out the house, just in case the police come and
just coincidentally, I'm just intervening a little bit. I had the pleasure of watching a documentary on Sunday, and this was about Salt River High School's role in the 1976 riot. And that particular incident you're talking about now, where your dad was on the parade, it started basically with a march of all the kids at school, and the teachers wasn't involved, nor the deputies or anybody, but they were just there to protect the kids.
Correct.
Because they knew there was going to be a lot of nonsense.
Yes.
And they happened to go, and it all hell broke loose there. And it just sort of coincides with what you are telling me now. So that started this whole movement of things which happened later in our thing.
So yeah, it was quite a traumatic event in '76, and I went back to South Peninsula. I was at South Peninsula at that time, in standard 7, grade 9, and I was telling the guys, hey, look what's happening in Soweto. Look what's happening in Alcester, where there were shootings, and now on the parade, and this happened to my father. So we were quite innocent, I would say, in a way. And so what can we do here? So we it's hilarious actually thinking about now. But we pulled out tufts of weeds growing in the lawn, the garden around the school, and we started tossing it over at passing cars. And of course, it was our sort of demonstration and our sort of acting out,
and it was
in solidarity with what is happening. But of course, South Peninsula is situated in a so-called white area, and of course, I could see the horror on people's faces as they were driving by, and these little weeds are flying with.
And just on that, it was more symbolic.
Yeah.
It was symbolic in the sense that you didn't take a stone and throw it. It was a piece of weed.
Yeah.
But it carried the same weight.
It carried the same weight that, and it is symbolic. There's symbolism involved, is that, we're going to do something about it. It's not about, falling down on your knees and praying and hoping that everything is going to change. We're going to do something about it. It's also a demonstration against the Group Areas Act, because here we are, a so-called coloured school that refused to move in a white area, and you're identifying with what's happening in a black area like Soweto, where students are being brutalized, Afrikaans is being forced upon them, and the general sort of anti-apartheid fever was taking root. So yeah, it was quite interesting that happened in '76. But so that was quite. I remember that quite clearly. And then later on, I was involved. Actually, I can talk about my mother also, because she was a nursery school teacher at a school in the Highlands, and even she was brave enough to stand up to the management at the school, the principal and the board of directors, whatever they call them, because SABC was coming to do a recording at the school. So now you're looking at uh, the state organ, the SABC, the main way that apartheid was propagated and reinforced. And they wanted to come and show the so-called Indian school and how nice it is, but it's not the reality of what education is, and it's a forced sort of situation where only certain people come to certain schools. So why do you want to support it? And she actually stood up, and I was actually at that meeting, and I'm very proud of the way that a nursery school teacher took on the rest of the doctors and lawyers and everybody else were supporting that, give our school some airtime on SABC. And she was, putting them through political education about the role of media and the role of painting South Africa in a certain way and perpetuating and propagating the apartheid system.
And basically painting a picture that everything's okay.
Exactly.
Everything's okay, while
Exactly.
a lot of other kids are deprived of this
Yeah.
thing, and they might have been fortunate that they were okay.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
but at the end of the day, this is what the government wanted to propagate, is to say to the world, listen, there's nothing wrong here, don't
Yeah.
worry, leave your sanctions, leave this.
Yeah.
And that's the bigger role, and which these guys didn't realize.
Correct.
And
Correct.
fantastic for your mother for standing up.
So it's good to reflect on these sort of situations, because it actually I'm really blessed that I still have both of them in my life, that I have parents that actually showed me the way. So so we were always involved in struggle as a family, and I can maybe jump to the 80s. The early 80s, I started at UCT in 1980, and then already, there were lots of demonstrations. There was the bus boycott, there was the red meat boycott, there was the fatties and monies boycott. And being at university, it actually was also very fortunate that the person could, be in contact with great minds and different sort of views. And I always tell the story that when I went to UCT in 1980, I had to apply for a permit to be there, because at that time, of course, it's a white English-speaking university, and I had to, kind of degrade myself to a point of actually writing there, I am a colored and I would like to go to UCT. Please give me permission. You actually had to put an application in to be at a tertiary institution like UCT, because of the way education was segregated. And so I started at UCT in 1980, and got involved in different discussions and different demonstrations and different supporting struggles in the community. So I also, I think about 82, 83, I could have been a member of a Zainian Students Organization, which later became SASCO. And we always had, links with the Congress of Students of South Africa, COSAS. So it was very interesting. I think I was a deputy treasurer or something at UCT, and also linking up with other structures like I knew a very good friend of Melvin Fourie. He was at UWC, and I remember we used to go out and fundraise and knock on businesses and get a little bit of funding to have a student congress, a meeting, a conference. I was also involved in other organizations like the Cape Youth Congress. I was actually at the launch in Athlone. I think it was Lawrence Road, some church there. So thinking back now, those were good days.
I'm going to sort of just interrupt you a little bit here. Just remember your train of thought. And I'm going to say to you that it is admirable that somebody that really didn't have to, because you guys were fairly, if I can say it so, a little bit well off. You had a mom that worked, you had a dad that worked, you had a good home. Really no need to sacrifice. You could have just rolled the boat and exactly. Swim. And it would have actually done so well even in our apartheid system. But you chose as a conscience to do something different.
It was a conscious choice. A conscious choice, and I think Islam, the religion that I follow, also plays a big role in it, because I also belong to kind of progressive religious sort of organizations. My parents were heavily involved in Qibla, for instance. I was involved with the Call of Islam, and I used to frequent a kind of progressive mosques, and got a lot of direction and sustenance about how a Muslim should actually react when you're living within an oppressive system. I used to go to Al Jamia, mosque in Claremont, also a mosque that was surrounded by people of color and Muslims, but sitting right in the middle of a white area, Claremont Main Road Mosque, and these mosques were frequented by Imam Abdullah Harun, was martyred, and his students. One of my teachers was Sep, Imam David's, for instance, and these people actually, directed one and said, look, you can't sit still. As a Muslim, you cannot sit still and allow injustices to go unchallenged. There are lots of verses about standing up for justice, even against your parents or yourself. So I think that also shaped the way that I grew up. And yes, I was part of the middle class, I would say. My father was a teacher, deputy principal. My mother was working. We lived comfortably, in fair ways. So there wasn't any reason for us to be involved. But it's because of political education, political guidance by parents, family, teachers, and the Islamic sort of thought that I was exposed to, that actually it was an obligation.
And I think also, like you mentioned before, is that you had all this literature available to you. You could read and you could see how things were supposed to be, you know. I think our religions and our people that we meet along our way play such a vital part in what you become and where you go and what your pathway through life is. And it is fantastic and it's admirable, because a lot of others, and I don't want to really go there, but I had in my own schooling and my own career, there was many that were almost reactionary, but are doing so well today. They doctors and lawyers, and they are politically conscious now, while they were not then. They were almost half reactionary. If we would march, you stupid guys, and,
exactly.
you know, to really mock you for walking and marching and say, no, we're against this gutter system that we called it, which wasn't really gutter if we look back now. But that was the thing. And a lot of those people did well for themselves, and one don't blame them. They obviously had their own thoughts and stuff. But the commitment to say, listen, no man, something's wrong and something needs to be done. And even in spite of where you are, who you are, you know, who your dad was or your mom was, it was just that consciousness that said, listen, we have to go on, we have to fight the system. It's not working for everybody. Correct. I might have a chance, I might be at UCT, or I might be at UWC, I might be at college or whatever, but for many others, that is unattainable. And in fact, I'm going to take you back to a little story, is where we had a brilliant math student, but he was black. And I think that at the time, and I must go corroborate the story just to give it authenticity, is that they said that this boy, it's senseless teaching him math because he's not going to use it, because beyond standard 6 he cannot go because he's a black person. You know? So that was the type of things that happened in South Africa that people didn't realize and was conscientized by people like yourself and the system after 76. And suddenly people became aware something is drastically wrong with our system.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll give it over.
Yeah, so I was fortunate to be guided by many people, and so in the early 80s I was involved in a number of organizations, Azaso, Keiko, and of course UDF. I was very involved in UDF, and actually on the day that the UDF was launched, on the 20th of August 83, I told everybody, look guys, it's my 21st, I know it's my 21st, but I'm not going to be home. If you want to see me, you come to Mitchell's Place.
Come there.
That's where the party's going to happen.
That's the whole party.
And I wasn't at home for my 21st. I was at the launch of the UDF.
Sure, amazing.
So, and I think that's sort of commitment that people had in those days. There was this selflessness.
You were obviously at varsity that time already. 83?
83, I was still at varsity.
Yes, yes. I just want to take you a little bit on a sort of journey, maybe a sad journey, or I don't know. I know that the security police picked you up and had you incarcerated. Yeah. Was this before, while?
No, that was after.
After.
That was 83. I was still at varsity. The UDF was launched. 84, we were still very much involved in different struggles and organizations, and I was still at varsity in 84. 85, I started teaching at Sinton, Alexander Sinton, as a junior maths and science teacher. And it was just by chance. It was just like, by default, really. Because what had happened is that I had finished my degree. I majored in microbiology and biochemistry at UCT. And I thought, no man, I can't really see myself sitting in a laboratory the whole day. I need to be with people. I need to interact with people.
Educate. And I'm going to just interrupt you just for a minute. Just keep your thought. I spoke to Donovan in one of the earlier episodes, Donovan Jurgens, and one of the things that we mentioned is this mentorship to others, and I think just by saying what you're saying now, you needed to interact with other people. You need to learn and teach what you have learned, and actually in this experiences that you had is to part some of that mentorship to younger people and carry on that role. And just sorry, I do this interruptions
because I just couldn't see, as much as I love being a molecular biologist, I couldn't see myself spending my working hours not interacting with people and talking about struggles and shaping minds and being shaped. You can't really have a conversation with bacteria and viruses in a petri dish, or
Yes.
So in 84 I did a honors in community health because it really spoke to me, because I was interested in health and I could see that a lot of the health problems is exacerbated by the system of apartheid. You know, the migrant labor system, the overcrowding in hostels, and lack of housing, and the TB rates, and all that had to do with the lack of good public health interventions in the country. So I did community health, but at the end of that year, I was offered a job within the colored health system in the head office, where you know, I will be interacting with Minister April, head of colored health, down the corridor. I said, no, thanks, I'm not taking that job.
And once again, I'm just interrupting. Once again, had you taken this job, you'd have been sorted for life. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It is that choice that you made that made the difference.
Yeah.
And you could have been Minister of Health if you wanted to. You know, I'm just saying the sacrifices that a lot of people made for the struggle, and people often don't get recognized for that.
So I said, no way am I going to be sitting in the same corridor as these guys. I'm totally against apartheid system. I'm totally against segregated health and every health that is segregated. So so the end of '84, after I graduated with the honors in community health, my father said, look, what are you doing? You know, there's a junior maths and science post available at Alexander Sin. I said, you know, let me see what this is about. So I joined the staff in 1985 at Alexander Sinton, and I just loved teaching, interacting with like-minded staff members.
But I think furthermore,
and also with youth.
Furthermore, sorry, just to interrupt there. Furthermore, I think you came in at the most tumultuous time of schooling that you could imagine.
Most exciting time, and it was dealing with true education, you know, and having the space to actually experiment with different things, you know, that, you know, which was quite revolutionary, that you're not coming into a class, everybody open up your textbooks and you read, you know, and you walk out. It's putting learners into groups. You discuss that, and doing things differently. You're doing biology, but you're doing things differently, you know. And you're doing, you know, bacteria with a grade 9 class, but you're talking about TB and the way TB spreads within an unjust society. So it just opened up different approaches and ways of looking at education, and it was a site of struggle. I mean, I was a WEC2 member, one of the first members, you know, in that in the Athlone area, which later became SADTU, which I was on the executive of the Athlone Central as well. So there were lots of things happening in the 80s that I just thoroughly enjoyed being a teacher. Interacting with young minds and guiding young minds, and we had a very good relationship between the staff and the students. So that was 85, and 86. That's when, of course, the state of emergency. I remember us going up to the Craddock IV's funeral. I've got a photograph of myself and my father, and I don't know who else is on the photograph, maybe my cousin Adil Murat, Dr. Murat, who sadly was murdered, and also Minister Ibrahim Patel.
Okay.
You know, we were on the same bus.
And if I can just take you a little back, you said sadly murdered. Was he murdered by the system, or was he murdered by?
Well, interestingly enough, we were both arrested in Wynberg on the 26th of June, 1986. We were actually on a mission. I had taken my father's car, and my father was actually in detention for 10 days already in 86. So he had a blue Mercedes, and I told my mother, and look, I'm going out and whatever. We actually, both Adil and myself were with our girlfriends at that time. And Adil actually married Rashida later on. But and our girlfriend said, "Where are you people going? Don't go out tonight. Don't worry. We're gonna be okay." So I parked the car in Garden Road, and all the spray paint tins were in the car, and Adil's uncle stayed in Garden Road, so I thought, okay, it's safe, And we were walking up Park Road from the Lux side towards the station and down along Witterboomer station, and this plainclothes cops just pulled up. Funnily enough, the cop's name was Sergeant Marks. I still remember his name, and he searched me, couldn't find anything. He searched Adil, and they found some stickers that we were putting up. Freedom Charter Day, 26th of June.
And in other words, they were watching you, or was it just incidental?
They were doing their rounds because they knew things were happening in Wynberg. There was a lot of organization and activity in Wynberg. We were part of the group that kept things going.
In the Wynberg area.
At one stage we had meetings in the local hangouts there in Wynberg, in Cozy Corner, and say, okay, at this time this is what's going to happen, and there's a whole group of us. Ashley Forbes was also charged with terrorism, and there were a lot of us. So on certain days, 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, the tires would be rolled out, and especially when there was a stay away call or something like that.
I'm going to interrupt you quickly. It's so interesting, and there's so many stories to tell. In the one hand, we had the story here of you and the doctor that got murdered, and on the other hand, you were with Ibrahim Patel at the Credit 4 funeral. And those are both different stories, but still part of your life.
Yeah.
And we actually, I've driven you a little bit away from the story that you were telling, but it's so interesting.
Yeah,
I think we're probably gonna have to be 10 times more to get the whole story across.
Before we started, it's amazing. You better tell me when to start and when to stop, and I can go on. And there's just so many memories. There's just so many memories of what we actually. But coming back to the day that we arrested, the 26th of June. So they came back and they searched me again, and then they found I had a knife that I always carried around with me, and then they found those khaki jackets, all the comrades used to wear.
Absolutely.
So I had stickers on me also. So we were arrested, and we spent. We were taken to Wynberg. No. So I whispered in Adil's ears. We were at Cozy Corner, Anissa's, that area, and this guy just came up to us and gave us this stuff. We don't know where the stuff comes from. And you stick by that story. So that was our story. So we told the cops, no, I don't know, the stuff we just got it. We were having something to eat. We were taking a walk, and
we were asked to do it.
Yeah. And well, he believed us because they took us there and said, okay, you just sit in the corner and tell me who gave the stuff.
Yeah.
He fell for it, but anyway, we were taken to Wynberg police station, and then they took Adil home. He stayed in Wynberg in Losby Avenue. And of course, his father was a principal at South Peninsula. His mother was, I think they could have been in their 50s at that stage. So it was quite worrying for them to see the son. You know, he was a 5th or 6th year medical student at that stage. And so they took him home, and when he came back, he said, what happened? They just searched the place, and they took pamphlets and things, and they said, on your diary, there's ANC written there. What is this ANC nonsense? No, he said, that's the antenatal clinic that I must go to. I said, quiet.
He's good. And he was clever at least. Oh,
yeah, then they left him at Wynberg, and they took me down to Fairways. So we pull up outside the family house in Fairways, and the police said, but this place is familiar. We've been here before. I said, yes, 10 days ago you came and you fetched my father. My father's in Victor Versteer. Okay, come, let's go inside. And yeah, so my mother, it was quite traumatizing, you know, for your husband to be picked up, and now your son. And at the same time, I must add that my younger brother, 5 years younger than me, he went into exile in that same year in 86. So he wasn't around also. He went into exile on the 14th of February 1986. So he went over into Zimbabwe, and then, you know, further for training.
As an ANC country, or just
he went across with Kibla PAC groupings, and did his training, and so it was, I wasn't there, my father wasn't there, my brother wasn't there. So and the reason why he was in exile is because 17th of September 1985, that was the siege of Sinton. It was a day that, it was during the emergency in 85, when all the schools were closed by the government, because the schools were the site of struggle. You know, people came together at schools and organized and mobilized and conscientized. And during the state of emergency, the state had decided that, you know, schools are too dangerous. We have to close them. And then we as a Sinton community, parents, teachers, students, we decided, no. You know, we are challenging this notion of the state owning schools. These are our schools. We're taking ownership of schools. We're going to reopen the schools. And it was a conscious decision by many schools to reopen. And so on that day, 17th of September 85, we opened the gates and we walked onto the school's premises. And all of a sudden, the police were on the school premises. And during those times, I used to carry my camera with me all the time. I've got hundreds of photographs of those years. And I took a picture of my father being grabbed, you know, he had a blue short sleeve safari suit on, grabbed like this and being pushed into the van. I must go look for the photograph.
You must. In fact, I'll put up that with this, actually, which will put the effect of the struggle was real.
Yeah. And the next thing I know, I'm also chucked into a different van. And I've actually got photographs taken inside the van. of myself.
If you look just behind you, and I'm going to take the camera just away from you a little bit,
Yeah.
and you look at that picture down below,
Down there.
no, the next to that one, yeah, that one. That's a picture of a boy,
Yes.
and he's
I know
also from
exactly.
Sinton.
Yes, I know exactly.
And
Yeah. I know
I
that
think
picture.
Lombard, if I'm not wrong, took the photo. Rashid. And
Yeah.
and this boy was also taken
Yes, that's
in
the
the
same
night,
day.
and he was 14 years old. This guy.
That's the same day. I think that's the same day.
Sure.
17th of September 85. And then, so the siege of Sinton happened when we were chucked into the vans. Most of the parents and teachers were pushed out into the the quad, and then the parents on the outside decided, no, you're not leaving here with our students, and they physically brought their cars and blocked the entrance. So the cops were trapped inside the school, and we were trapped inside the vans.
Oh my word.
Which was quite interesting. And this whole power play, who has the power, who has the real power. And of course, after some time, tear gas was fired, reinforcements had been sent in. The police started pulling cars away, and finally we were trapped inside the vans, overcome with tear gas, but we were taken out to Manenberg police station.
I'm just going to interrupt you again because we hopped a little bit. We were on the part where you were at your home, you were arrested, where you released, and this part was this part prior to that, because you were also arrested here with this one with your dad.
Yes,
So
exactly.
it's now you're getting used to it already.
Yeah. This was this was the first time that I was arrested in '85, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, but that time, why I was speaking about my brother being exiled now in 1996, and I'm trying to get the story going about when he was arrested.
Okay.
So he was arrested about 3 times, if I remember correctly.
Was he also a student at Sinton, or was he somewhere else?
He was at South Peninsula,
Okay.
and in '85 he was a first year student, I think, at Pentec. He was doing a diploma in medical technology, I think. So the first time he was arrested was at Weinberg Secondary in Ottery Road. They had a rally there. My sister must have been about 13, 14 years old on the SRC at school, and he was helping them putting up the speakers, having a rally there. And the cops came, they arrested both of them on that day. He was detained, and she was arrested, but I think they released the day after or something like that. There was a lot of attention, both nationally and internationally, on the detention of young, the youth, 13, 14, 15, they were detained. So that was the first time he was arrested. The second time he was arrested, it was a state of emergency. We had come onto the premises. I was just dropping my father, and I was going to give him a lift to Belleville. Schools were closed. There was some stay away or something. And the cops came onto the premises and said, no unauthorized person must be on the premises during the state of emergency. And they arrested my brother again. But they knew our car and who we were and that sort of thing. So it was always a targeted sort of. And then the third.
It was just harassment, really.
Yeah, and so on the 17th of September, when we were taken away, I landed up with the rest of the students and parents at Manenberg police station. And all the parents went there with their cars waiting for the students and the teachers and everybody to be released. And then my attitude was, no, we are going to stay the night. They're going to take us to court tomorrow, and we're going to make a big thing out of this. And then we realized that my father wasn't with us. he was also arrested, but he wasn't with us. So, but where is he? So then they decided, they said, no, look, you will be the first one to just pay an admission of guilt.
Get out.
And get out, because something is not
You
right
are
here.
your
So I said,
father.
okay, as much as I'd like to actually stay here, maybe it's a good idea to actually get out. So I was taken from the cells to the charge office. And at the same time that I was there, these massive guys, white policemen, they were pushing my father around in the courtyard, getting him out towards the cars, where the cars were parked. And all I could, I mean, what can you do? You know, I mean, I'm barely, 22, 23 years old, you know, a new teacher. You're surrounded by police with massive guns, and you can see that they are assaulting your father. And I just went to the burglar bars of the charge officer and said, "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" And they turned in Afrikaans and just, you know, they just swore at me. You could actually see and you could smell the alcohol in their breath also. Effed me left, right, and center. And I said, no, that's my father. You don't touch him. So, and that was the last time I saw my father. When I got out, went outside, we were released. I said, look, guys, my father was taken away from here. I saw him being pushed towards a car. They said, no, the car's coming in and out, but definitely your father wasn't in one of the cars. I thought, this is very strange. So I went home, had to explain to my mother what happened the day. I don't know where my father is. We got the lawyers involved. They were searching all the police stations in Cape Town. Couldn't find him anywhere. I, of course, had to clean up the house. You know, any photographs,
once again,
literature.
The old story.
Yeah, same story. In black bags to the neighbors, you know, hide it in the garage. And then, like 11 o'clock the night, there was a knock on the door. Open the door, like 10 guys with machine guns and rifles, and my father still in his short-sleeved safari suit, blue safari suit. And they came in there, look, we're coming to search the place. And don't speak to the prisoner, you know, that sort of thing. And my mother asked him, were you beaten? And he just nodded. So we managed to give him something to eat, pack his bag. They searched the place, couldn't find anything, and they left. And for a day or two, we didn't know where he was. We had informed the lawyers and said, look, he was definitely arrested. He was here. We couldn't find him anywhere. And it's just so strange that on the very same day, the 17th of September, his two nieces who were studying at Hewitt College, they had also been arrested with their friends. And they were taken to, I think it was, some police station in Kuilsrivier or somewhere up north, Brackenfell actually.
Yes.
Brackenfell. And they came out and they said that they saw my father there.
That was a favorite place of them, and I know the place because you know Joseph as well. And Joseph was taken to this very same place.
Yeah.
So that was their favorite place
Yeah.
because it was isolated, very difficult to find,
Yeah.
and it was in this real white area that nobody frequented. So it was a very hidden place.
Yes, and so we told the lawyers, and the lawyers went out there, and we found him. We found him there. So what had actually happened, I mean, the stories came out afterwards, is that when he was taken to Brackenfell, he walked along the cells and he could hear people being tortured, youngsters being tortured. And he soon found out that it was actually his two nieces that were being tortured right in that same police station. And they were made to do, extensive exercises, standing on their toes, wet bags over their faces, the normal sort of torture techniques that were used. And they had to just pass each other without acknowledging
that they knew each other.
And that's how we knew that.
And it's mind-boggling to think the trauma that this must have inflicted in people. You cannot have a normal life even when you're adult now. And our country needs so much healing, and part of that is the trauma that the people, it's very hard to forgive, and the things that you witness as a young man, as a child, it never, and you're still fortunate that you have your mom and your dad with you, but you can imagine the anger, and we've overcome that, and we've with a new sort of democracy, we've forgiven, and people can't understand the anger that is in people. And I'm going to make an example quickly. I shared something earlier on. I made a painting of Winnie Mandela and a friend of mine. She wanted herself with the painting, and she happened to share it. She bought it from me about probably 5 years ago, whatever, and she shared it now because it was the anniversary of Winnie's birthday or something.
The birthday yesterday or something, yeah.
And she shared it, and I shared it, and one of my social media friends got so upset because I shared this of Winnie Mandela. But the point is, people don't understand the anger that people felt, because he felt, how can somebody say that you must necklace somebody and take a match? He was tortured himself and he wasn't a bad person. And rightly so, some didn't do it. But you can imagine the trauma of somebody, like you mentioned, your cousins or your father's nieces, having a wet bag thrown over their face and beaten, or stand on your toes the whole day. Yeah. So that mental anger will always be with you. Although you're forgiven, you're never ever going to forget it,
Yeah.
But sorry, I'm interrupting. But
it's true what you say. I mean, this country has endured such a lot of trauma that has never been acknowledged and has never been dealt with. And I think many of our social ills and social challenges that we have can be traced back to the trauma that people have endured over the years, over generations. I mean, my parents were evicted from District 6. And I remember my grandmother's house in District 6. I mean, that still has not been sorted out after all these years. My mother is 82. She was heading the claim for the land in District 6. It still hasn't been sorted out. So lots of people have endured such a lot of anguish and pain and it hasn't been dealt with. It's not acknowledged by people. It's not dealt with. And yes, lots of people must be suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder.
Dehran, I'm just going to take a little bit further. We're on literally an hour, and I'm pretty sure we can keep on this discussion for another 3 hours.
Yeah.
Just shortly, tell us about your own incarceration. I know that they kept you in solitary for almost a year. And that trauma that once again, like you say, you probably need post-traumatic counseling.
Well, I actually was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder when I was released. But coming back to the story of when we were arrested, so they took me back home. They brought me to Wynberg. We stayed overnight in Wynberg, myself and Adil. We were taken to Claremont police station. I don't know why the cops actually took us to Claremont. And funnily enough, if I think back, what had happened is that one of the policemen had put his gun under the seat. and I can't remember if we were just, our two hands were handcuffed together. But I remember there was a massive argument when they came back and they realized that what they did is, can you, these twee terroristen wat hier in die motor is, hoe kan jy jou 4 wapen daar los?
Sure.
But I mean,
and it shows
could have gotten out of hand.
And the thing is, it shows what type of character of people you were.
Yeah.
You were honest, and you were fighting a battle
Yeah.
that was sort of a higher level battle. It wasn't a terrorist battle. Because if you were really, if you, and I call it that, but if you were really out there to hurt people, you'd have taken the gun and shoot this bugger, you know.
Yeah.
But you didn't. It was beyond that.
So anyway, we were taken to Victor Verster, and of course you first have to go through your through the medical checkup, and then I bumped into Victor Steyn. Victor Steyn was an activist who I knew from UCT. He was a couple of years older than me, and I said, look, just tell Mr. Swart, my father, that I'm also here. So I was taken in. We were taken into B section. B section were communal cells, about bigger than this area. It was the smallest of the communal cells in B section. And as we came in, I knew some people already, activists, and our local butcher, also from a family of activists, Adam Jaffa, Zubaida Jaffa, Mansour Jaffa.
Journalist, I think.
Yeah, so no, bring them in this cell. So yeah, we were in the communal cell. That was the 27th of June. I think Adil took out an interdict against the minister, and he was released in August. I think around August. So he spent about a month or 2 in detention. I also had an interdict against the Minister of Justice at that time. But there was some technical sort of reason that the court case never came up because of other court cases, waiting for other court cases. And Dalo Omar was my advocate. He actually visited me in Victor Verster as well. So I was kept there, and in different sections. The security police didn't want us to meet, my father and myself. But we just wrote letters and made sure that we met every day. So at least we were able to meet. The guards would bring us together in a little space, and would smuggle things from one side to the other. Newspapers. It was like gold. Yeah. Newspaper was like gold. And also, I had taken statements of all the detainees in my section during exercise time. They would come one by one, and I would write a full statement, because many of them never had family, many of them never had legal representation. And then I would smuggle it out to my father, to Trevor Manuel, to the lawyers, and so that's what we were involved in. But then, funnily enough, I don't know how it happened, I think it's deliberate, that on my father's 50th birthday, 19th of November 1986, I had written to the captain. I said, look, I want to spend the day with my father. It's his 50th birthday, and they allowed it. Wow. So they took me out of B section, was a communal section, to A section, where all the kind of the leadership were. And Trevor Manuel was there, Noel Williams.
Trevor Manuel was with your dad then, in the same cell.
Yeah. So we met each other and chatted. Not long after that, not even an hour with him, they came to call me, pack your stuff. I said, why? No, the security police are here, pack your stuff. I said, no, take me to them. I want to know where am I going. Because I know that you've been taking a lot of people. You take them to the, there was the railway police section on the foreshore, They were kept there, beaten up, tortured, and then thinking that they were going home, and then they come back a week or two later. So you take me there first, let me just go and ask them, where are you taking me? No, you're going to Goodwood police station. Why? No, you're going to be interrogated. I said, okay, fine. And I went to pack my stuff, off I went to Goodwood. So I was kept there in Goodwood for about, that was solitary. That was about 2 months, I think. About 2 months. And they would, they kept me, I was kept in a very small cell. It's, it's stinking, the light is on 24 hours, there's no running water. I said, look, I have to brush my teeth. I'll brush it over the pot over there, I need to wash. I'm supposed, the regulation said at least 1 hour I can be outside for exercise. Yeah, but there's no shower here. I said, okay, there's a courtyard. You give me some hot water, and once a day I want hot water, and I will wash myself in the courtyard. So I was there for about about a couple of weeks, and I complained every day. I said, look, I need to get out. You can't just keep in every day, the whole day. The regulation, your regulation says at least 1 hour. And
I
eventually they
I think
said,
part of this thing was to break your spirit, to break it down.
It's
mentally.
all part of torture. It's all part of you denied your proper food, you denied your freedom of movement, you denied being clean. It's all part of chipping away on your psyche, on your humanity, being your humanness. It's to break you down. And one of the most traumatic experiences that I've experienced while in Goodwood was when they had brought 3, they looked like gangsters, like mean guys. They put him in a cell opposite me, and then later on they brought a young guy. He must have been a teenager, and they threw him into that same cell. And the trauma that I suffered because of that experience of being totally helpless, knowing full well that the police know what's going to happen to that young guy in prison with those hardened criminals. He shouted and asked for help, and the police knew that he is being assaulted, sodomized, beaten up, to a pulp. And I was so angry. I was trying to actually open up those bars just to give this youngster some help. And I shouted at these guys. I said, what are you guys doing? Who are you? He's Jay. But the normal is Jay.
Yeah.
Look here, I'm a comrade. And this is what I stand for. I don't know what you stand for, but it sounds like you standing for exactly what the oppressive white regime stands for, is to oppress and hurt and take advantage of people. And that's exactly what I'm against. I said, so what can you do? I said, you are lucky that I don't have an AK-47 in my hand, because then I will actually help that guy that you are terrorizing, hurting, sodomizing. And it was just a normal thing. And this is the brutality that people don't understand, that the police, they knew exactly what was happening. They could hear me shouting for them to come also, besides him, the guy who was attacked. And he was just a youngster loitering on the corner or something like that, not involved in any sort of crime, but to experience that trauma. And
once again, that was another form of torture for you, because they knew exactly what was going to happen. They knew that you were going to be the helpless, basically. There's nothing you want to change the system, as they're telling you. you want to change the system, but look what we can do, you know. And like I said, it's this hurt and this trauma that still is prevalent in society today.
Yeah.
And it's just so sad. And we look at the TRC, we look at the forgiveness and stuff like that. And we're like, do you guys really deserve forgiveness? You know, in certain aspects.
Yeah.
Certain times, like you said, there was people that were humble, and even in our police forces, which they need to be recognized for as well. Where you made the example where they took you to your dad and said, look, you can spend the day with your dad. It was normal people.
It was normal people. Yeah, that's so true, because, you know, so I was taken away after complaining. I was taken to Goodwood, and I was in Goodwood for a couple of weeks, I suppose. Also in a massive. I was in actually a very nice big cell, all alone, and but the fleas ate me up. Yo, there was a flea into it. I used to like. I brought all my toiletries with, my own clothes, and I had this powder blue pajamas. You know, and I'd get in my pajamas every night after having a shower and doing some exercise. Whatever. You have to have a routine to get through these, solitary confinement. And the next morning you wake up, you're
full of buzz,
full of bites of blood, of your powder blue pajamas. But I think one of the most that actually kept me going was with two things. I knew that somebody was a fellow detainee somewhere, because he used to whistle and sing freedom songs, and then we used to sing together. So that even though we were in behind bars and walls, and that camaraderie was still there. So that was also something that kept you going. And one evening I was asleep, and I heard in the distance my name being called. I must be dreaming. And then later on, the door opens of my cell, and it's like maybe 8 o'clock at night, and 9 o'clock, maybe I'm just falling asleep. And my mother comes in, my sister comes in, and my girlfriend at that time. And I thought, am I dreaming? They said, look, the guys inside, police actually just smuggled us in quickly just to come and see how you're doing. And that was amazing. Wow. Because, when you're in detention for the whole year, you don't have any contact with anybody. You do get a visit every 2 weeks. And my mother used to drive through, every week she used to drive through. So it's either her who will see one of us, or my sister who will see one of us. And she
and both of you and your dad were kept.
We were both in Victor State.
But for the same amount of time as well.
He was released. He was released in about 2 months before me.
Okay.
He spent 10 months and I spent 12 months.
Wow.
And but the point that you had made is that there was humanity, even in those that were part of the system.
Yes.
Like that policeman in Goodwood. They actually allowed my mother and my sister and my girlfriend at the time to actually come and visit. And quick hug, quick kiss, and how's everything going? And they left. So that was great. And even
just to fast forward, just to the time is gonna catch us a little bit.
Yes.
Is if you think back now, and this is a question I ask most of the people that I do the conversation with, if one think where you are now, and you think back and you think, could we have done something differently? Would we have wanted to do something differently in hindsight and what you've gone through, the trauma that you've experienced? I know that it's such a difficult question to ask, because had it not been for people like you, we'd have probably still had the system that we had. But in hindsight, you had the opportunity, and once again, I'm saying it clearly to the people out there, you had the opportunity to be a big cop in the government, in the old apartheid system, if you had accepted that unjust system. But yet you chose something differently. And the question I want to just pose to you, if you had the chance, or not even to have gone to work for them or anything, but would you have done something differently that the outcomes could have been different? You know, we're sitting now in a system where we feel we've been cheated a little bit in a sense, because it's not what we fought for. It's not what we wanted to attain. I mean, so many people without jobs, so many houseless people, a lot of graft going on in government, corruption, all these things. And it wasn't worth the sacrifices. Or maybe it was worth the sacrifices, but that wasn't our end game. It wasn't what we wanted for ourselves. We wanted something better for everybody. And in this, I pose the question, if you could, would you have done something different? And it's not, it's just, I'm just putting it out there. It's not a correct answer or a wrong answer or a right answer. It's just to ask the question, do you think we should have made sure of it that when we finish with this fight, things would have, the outcomes would have what we wanted for the thing?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I don't think I would have done anything differently. I could have had a comfortable life. I could have, had a degree, 2 degrees, a diploma. Yeah, I could have focused on myself, but I would never have been happy. I think I was driven to be an activist, and that's just part of my nature, I suppose. So I don't think I would have done anything differently. I think where we went wrong is that we just sat back after the vote was achieved, and I don't know if it was there could be many reasons why things went pear-shaped. I think maybe too much trust was put into the hands of people that we thought would manage the transition and ensure that true change would actually be seen in South Africa. I think we put too much trust in certain people, and in the end, those people, many of those people, were just looking out for themselves. So it could have been just struggle fatigue also that set in. I mean, years of struggle had taken a toll on people. People were suffering with trauma.
And I think, like you said, people were glad that it was finally sort of over.
Yeah.
We've achieved what we were supposed to achieve.
Yeah.
Democracy happened in 1994. We had a good constitution.
Yeah.
So I think people gave in. They were tired.
Yeah.
And they gave in, and like you said, they allowed the leadership to really guide us and lead us to a better place.
And I think that is where things went wrong, where there wasn't this kind of independence and the independent voice of activists and saying, look, we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't be doing that. Let's start looking at the systems and structures that's actually perpetuating the inequality and the injustice that's actually happening. So I think that's where things went pear-shaped.
I think also I see the sudden surge, and especially of what I'm doing now, and all around you checking people now saying, hey, listen, something's not right here. And people are letting their voice be heard again.
Yeah.
And this was one of my purposes of this Unsung Hero, is to show, listen, it wasn't just those leadership that sacrificed. There were so many others.
Yeah.
And not only sacrifice like we did, in terms of activism, but all over. People, the petrol jockey that gave somebody petrol that didn't have money, that's a hero in my book as well. So those type of things I'm going to highlight and expose you. The last final question I'd like to ask you, and it's just about giving those that helped you, and I know your father played a big role, and your mom and so on, is those that played a vital role in forming your activism and bringing you, and I think you mentioned a couple, the imams and the one teacher that you were at whose husband was an activist. Those, just giving a bit of recognition to those people as well, that helped and helped you shape and form yourself and your opinion. And in terms of just my own activism, if I can call it that, I know a lot of teachers at my school played a hell of a big role in just shaping my own person. And a lot of times there was, I'm not going to mention it because it's not about me in any case, but our library teacher, for instance, the person that gave us library, and she was also English teacher, Mrs. Cap, she introduced us to Joan Baez. She introduced us to John Denver and certain freedom songs, that we can sing along now to certain songs and understand the meaning thereof. And those are the type of people I just want you to acknowledge as you sit here that played that role. It can be your wife, it can be your kids even. But like I said, I know your father, your mom, the teachers that you were. But is there any special people that you'd like to mention and say thank you guys, you helped shape me?
There are just so many people, I wouldn't know where to start, I wouldn't know where to start. Yes, my parents, my teachers, but also the community leaders at that time. I haven't even mentioned the role of sport, for instance, the whole SACOS leadership, the fellow students at university, our contemporaries, they were great minds. If I think about the religious leaders, as I've mentioned, Imam Seb Davids, for instance, those were great minds that shaped me. The UDF leadership, the ANC leadership, there were great minds of the PAC, the Unity Movement. There were so many good articles and discussions that one was exposed to through all the years that it's difficult to mention specific names. It's just like, it's absolutely. I think I was nurtured and benefited from so many different people from different walks of life, different political persuasions. It's so difficult to pinpoint exactly, to say this person.
Fantastic. No, fantastic. Listen, this segment went on for an hour and 22 minutes, and I'm pretty sure that we can go on for another 4 hours.
I'm sure.
I thank you. I think this is going to be an exciting episode. I really do, and I thank you on behalf of South Africans and as a country as a whole, and what role you play. And maybe you are recognized, maybe you're not, but in my view, I think we salute you. And we thank you for playing that role. And like I said early on, you could have chosen any other role for yourself. You had the opportunity, you had your degree. You didn't need to sacrifice any of the things that you did, but you did. And I thank you for it. Thanks very much, Dehran. This is a fantastic episode.
And I must commend you on this opportunity that you're giving so many people to actually voice, these stories. It's very important to acknowledge the ordinary person. Everybody had a role, played a role, and I really commend you for that. Thanks.
Thank you. The last little point I'd like to make is many of our comrades and all the comrades are dying, you know, and their stories are dying with them. You know, your dad, I'm sure he's in his 80s, late 80s. He's got hundreds. I think maybe I must actually schedule him also to come on, you know.
I'm sure he'll enjoy it. He'll say yes.
maybe you should mention it to him, and if you'd like to give his side of the story, because those stories are lost. Maybe you can tell some of the stories that you know, and like you told us the story of the jail and Trevor Manuel and everybody in one cell and so on. But his thing would be invaluable as well.
Yeah.
And maybe, like you said, at a later stage we have to get him on and just to give his side of the story.
He'll definitely say yes.
And just out of interest, and this is just sort of off the record, the interview is over. I know that your dad was very strict as well, because I spoke to a few students of Sinton. Said your dad was a disciplinarian, you know. But would you like to just elaborate slightly on that?
I think that's one of the reasons why I never went to Alexander Sinton, because I think my life would have been in danger. So that's why I chose to go to South Prudential. Because he had the reputation of being the disciplinarian.
But in a good way. In a good way. Obviously, I know the older teachers, we didn't realize it at the time, but they were just looking out for us and looking out for our safety, you know. Exactly. But thank you very much, Dehran. This was fantastic. I really enjoyed this interview, and I'm hearing all the stories.
Yeah.
It is fantastic.
Sure.
It is liberating.
There's still lots of other stories I can tell.
Absolutely.
But I really enjoyed it too. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh my word. I'm just introducing myself again. We're going on to part 2 of Dehran's story. Thank you.
So I was explaining that my brother was arrested about 3 times on 3 different occasions. Was arrested at Wynberg Secondary. Both him and my sister were arrested. He was detained. The second time, the police came onto the premises and they arrested him at Sinton, because during the emergency regulations, you're not supposed to be an unauthorized person is not supposed to be on the premises. He was arrested again, detained. And the third time he was arrested was about 2 weeks after the 17th of September, because there was evidence that he was involved with attacking a bus and damaging a bus outside Alexander Sinton during the siege of Sinton, when the parents had blockaded the road. So he was asked to come in for questioning, and he was taken to Athlone police station. And during that time, those involved in what they called public violence cases were not seen as any as being part of the political struggle. You're not seen as a detainee. You're actually seen as a criminal. So all those that were charged with political violence would actually be charged, and even throwing a stone. I think there was a case in Uppington where those who were throwing stones were charged for and sentenced to up to 5 years. And that is why we as a family took the decision that it's best for him to actually leave the country and go into exile, which he did on the 14th of Feb 1985. Yeah.
Okay, sure. And he's fine now, he's back, and he's okay?
He's, well, you know, as you say, who is okay after, you know, living through trauma?
Okay.
So he's fine, married, kids.
Okay.
But I think, you know, with him, what I find very sad is that, you know, he was in his first year of being at Pentech, doing medical technology, and you know, he sacrificed all that, going into exile, going for military training, coming back, and not actually having a profession.
Sure. Yeah. Just on that, something that we missed earlier as well is the death of the doctor, your doctor cousin.
Yes.
And you said you don't know quite what to call it. Was it a murder? Was it not a murder? who was responsible for it?
Yeah.
Can we sort of just touch on
Okay,
that?
let's just touch back on that. So Adil became a doctor.
He was released 2 months. He obtained
Yes, so he was a medical student when we were both in detention in '86. He was released after about 2 months. He graduated. Um, but actually, if I go back, the year that he was going to graduate, his final year, he was actually arrested again by the security police. And then the lawyers came to me and said, look, what's happening? He's been arrested. Can you give us some insight? So I had to tell the lawyers that, well, what I think it is that he was recruited by Ukonto Sizwe, and he did speak to me about what his involvement was, about identifying places to store arms, and he mentioned who he was involved with. And funnily enough, I said, look, it's best if we stay apart, because I also had made contact with the Ukonto Sizwe when I was in Botswana in June 85. And let us rather, keep our roles separate. So he was detained, he was interrogated and released. After graduating, he decided, and spending his internship and community service, well, not community, but internship. He was at hospital in PE, Livingston, came back to Cape Town, and he could also have started a surgery anywhere. He was the only son of his parents. They were very proud of him being a doctor, but he actually chose to have a surgery in Guguletu. He said, I'm going to take my service to the people where the people need me. And we went out there, identified a little surgery next to the butcher in Guguletu. It's just at the back of the FAU offices, Food and Allied Workers Union offices. We had a bribe with the community, welcoming the community to his surgery, and the surgery was revamped, and he spent a couple of years there. But in 1988, January 88, unfortunately, 3 youngsters came in under the influence of alcohol, demanding the jewelry and money from patients and staff, and he actually gave the keys to his car and said, look, of his car to them, and one of them stabbed him in the heart, and he died right in the surgery, in the community that he actually chose to be in that community. So it was a great loss, because we were more like brothers. We were only 2 years apart, and we spent a lot of time together. So yeah, that was
Once
in 1998.
Very traumatic.
Very traumatic. Sure. He had a wife, Rashida, and two boys. Danielle must have been about 1.5, and Gerard was a couple of months old.
Shame. Very sad story.
So that was Dr. Adamora.
And often we encounter that, and it's probably just part of life, I suppose. You dedicate your life to a community, and then they stab you literally in the back. So
but it shows how complex society is, and how complex communities are, and how different influences and forces actually shape a community. The whole political setup, the lack of education and opportunities and employment,
And also
the role of drugs and alcohol and
also the continuation, if I can put it as that, and this is my saddest um, part that I'm so passionate about as well, is the fact that we still perpetuate this thing about townships, where you still have the same things that you're talking about, the drugs, the alcohol, the abuse, the GBV. All these things are still prevalent for the simple reason that we are not building. My idea was in terms of expanding our nation, as it were, is to give everybody a fair chance. If you build homes, for instance, and I'm going just a little bit out of our sphere, but say, for instance, you build a home, you say, okay, here's one for a white person, here's one for a brown person, here's one for a black person. But brown and black, I mean, you know what I'm saying. So you integrate society again, like we had in District 6, for instance, and you were alluding to it earlier, where we now integrate our townships. So it doesn't become a black township or a brown township, a Menenberg or a Gugulitu. It is now, it doesn't matter. And if you don't want to be there, you're a white person or a black person, you don't want to be with that one, you go to the back of the list. You go right at the end. So there's like 55 million people waiting for home. You go to the back if you don't want to live there. So every time you allocate like that, you know. And at the end of the day, and I'm just throwing out ideas, and I think one point I made earlier is to say to you is, how do we make things better, you know? And I think part of this thing, if they ever get together and they get in consensus, it's when they build townships, and especially, I'm specifically, look, we've got the ability to buy wherever we want because we've got the money, but for those that are not able to, that the government provides for, or they provide a rental scheme or whatever they're going to do it that way, where you integrate society again, and you have mixed people, and the mixture of those people will then generate the society that we want. Just to go back just a little bit, we skipped a little bit of a thing as well earlier on, is just your when you visited the Craddock 4, and you were saying that you and your dad and you met up with Ibrahim Patel, and you have the photos to prove it.
Yes,
Can you just sort of just
I've got amazing photographs of that trip and of being in Craddock, because remember, we were all put into our own little pockets, you know, where we stayed and which schools we went to, and very few of us had the opportunity of actually, you know, going into a black township and you know, meeting up with people, because the whole point of apartheid was to separate us and not actually let us experience the common humanity that we all had. But when the Craddock 4 were murdered and this funeral was arranged, you know, we left from the Samaj Center in Rylands, and we got onto buses and off we went. And just the way that different communities from all different parts of South Africa actually assembled and were welcomed by the Craddock community. And just that feeling of we all in the struggle together. They might separate us, we might be from different parts of the country, but that energy, that feeling, that anger also, that here 4 great South Africans were murdered, and here we are to show our determination to change this country. And it was one of the big kind of events that actually where the ANC flag was unfurled, and it was a massive ANC event, even at that time when the ANC was banned. So it really was a significant event that I was part of, to see that there is this movement, this,
you must call it camaraderie.
yes, you could feel the energy that people are saying, look, we must, even though comrades are falling around us, we are going to stand up and actually carry on the fight.
Thank you so much. That is, I think we sort of covered that little part that we skipped, and
Sure.
unfortunately part of the if you're in discussion, if you in the and this was part of the reason why I changed it in the beginning. I wanted to interview people.
Okay.
So when you do the discussion, it often breaks the routine, and you go from this story to that story, and you lose track of it because there's just so many. And like you said, you can spend days here and tell the story. So it is very interesting, and I thank you for the stories. It was fantastic, and I think people will want to hear this. They want to be part of it, number one, and this part of this is making them feel they were part of it. A lot of my people that I interact with don't understand sometimes the reasons why people are angry, the reasons why people did certain things, you know. So part of this is enlightenment to them as well. They were sheltered, a lot of them. They had their nice schools, they had their nice houses. They were literally, like you mentioned now, they were literally apart. So they didn't, some of them didn't even realize that there was a black township. The only interaction they had with blacks was the people that came to do their garden and came to clean their homes. So a lot of them don't understand the struggle, and a lot of them don't understand where the people are coming from and why they're so angry and why you've got everything now, you still want to drive us out, you're still threatening us and so on. So people is angry. We came to a point, very close to a point when Mandela was released, where people integrated with each other. It was taken a different direction by the different presidents that were, and I have a lot of faith in our president now. I hope that he can muster and actually.
There's nothing else really that we have.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It could have gone so wrong.
It could have gone so wrong.
So
we just hope that things can be pulled a little bit.
Yeah. And
we
we're going.
We must get people in orange overalls. That's all I say.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Yeah. And like you said, there's a step towards that now.
Yeah.
And it's a serious step, and people, you can see there's a big fight back. You know. But we hope we're gonna get there, and I think that will please a lot of people. We are a forgiving nation. We really are a forgiving nation. You can catch on the biggest chunk, and then people forgive you. But the thing is, there's a point where you steal from your own, and I think that cannot be forgiven. So,
you know, I mean, the way that, you know, when we were in the struggle, it was that selflessness that we had.
Oh, absolutely.
I had a beetle that, you know, I was part of the DPSC was Danish Parent Support Committee was banned. We formed the Western Cape Coordinating Committee, just, you know, but we were there to support detainees. I used to, you didn't have the attitude, okay, who's going to give me petrol money? You know, you put the petrol in, you go to Paarl, you have a meeting in Paarl, you know, you put your petrol in, you go to Atlantis, to pamphleteer, to Outbay. It was a selflessness.
Absolutely. And you used your own funds for it. You didn't expect handouts or anything.
You didn't wait for handouts. What am I getting out of this?
Absolutely.
Nowadays, everybody wants to know the price before they do something.
And they evaluate you on what you have. They look at you and they'll ask you, what are you? Are you a doctor? Are you a lawyer? Are you a teacher? That they can evaluate you and see on what level of respect they must give you. I want to tell you a funny little story about myself, and once again, I don't really want to make it about me, but in 1985, I just left school in 1984, and I joined the company as a driver for them. The owner of the company was one of my ex-teachers. And he opened up a company and said, "Sean, come work for me." No, I don't have a job, I'll do it, and so on. And I didn't go to college, I didn't go to varsity, so here was a job opportunity for me. Yeah, he happened to be now, or after he left his company, or closed down his company, he became the chairperson of the Communist Party in the Western Cape.
Okay.
But anyway, he had a company, the company doesn't exist anymore, so I can actually name it. The company's name was Freightways. But the company vans were this yellow color. It was a yellow, like the cops of the time had yellow vans. It was a similar yellow color to that. And we were driving this Toyota highest bakkies. And now I'm being the activist, 1985, like you now said, was like the time of struggle and marches and stuff. Then there was a big march at Athlone Stadium. I don't know if you can recall, but they had these kids constable come in and they were standing and we are giving the command now to shoot, and the people scattered. And I was here with this guy's van filled with petrol, and I was carting the running people just a little bit further away that the cops can't get hold of him. And I don't know how. Because cell phones wasn't really a big thing then.
No cell phones.
I think I had a what's this thing's name that the doctors had?
Yes.
The thingy, but I had one of them. Please call the company urgently. I phoned the company from a ticket box, and they're saying seeing Freightways Bucky carting the students out there was coming. They're gonna land me to ship. But I was learning, and I have this whack of complexion. I'm pretty sure that a lot of people thought it's the cops picking up the kids, but I was just escorting and then turning around, taking them up.
No, those yellow cars. Bakan actually bought a GTI during those years. I say, Adil, how can you buy a yellow car? I say, we must
get rid of it immediately. Anyway, listen, I'm closing off.
Sure.
Thank you so much.